Hello, everybody. It's nice to virtually see you. This presentation, first and foremost, is with gratitude for the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation webinar series. I'm so grateful that they asked me to participate and that they're making these all available to all of us out there during this crazy time. So again, this is for the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation, and I hope it finds you all safe and well and coping through this pandemic that we're all experiencing. So, the title of this presentation is The Integrative Approach to Parkinson's Disease, Redefining Nutrition to Manage Your Symptoms. My name is Dr. Karin Duncan. I'm a naturopathic medical doctor at Coeur d'Alene Healing Arts here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So first and foremost, disclosures, I have none. The Northwest Parkinson's Foundation is sponsored by different companies, but those do not provide a conflict of interest for my individual practice. I do want to start right away by giving credit where credit is due. My mentor, Dr. Lori Mishley, many of you have probably heard of her or are patients of hers or know her research or have heard a podcast. She's such an amazing advocate for people with Parkinson's and their families, and just really breaking barriers in all realms for integrated therapeutics to help with the progression of Parkinson's. And so many of the concepts that I will be speaking about today are really and due to her incredible research and work on these different topics. So I just want to give her the proper credit here. She works at Seattle Integrative Medicine in Seattle, Washington, and then runs the online now and in-person Vastir PD summer school. So if you're brand new to naturopathic medicine and are wondering what it is that naturopathic doctors do, sorry about that. I just want to chat really quick about kind of what a naturopathic doctor is and how it's really not that, can be not that different from your conventional care doctor in some ways, and how it can be extremely different in other ways. So we really bridge the worlds of the Western allopathic medicine with holistic, time-honored natural medicine. And I like to say, you know, our ultimate goal is to restore the body to a state of its ability to heal itself. We're extremely educated in the physiology and biochemistry of the human body because we want to understand how it works so we can get it back to that state of function. And we alter the environment in a way that we can do that. And working on a scale or hierarchical scale of intervention, we really try to start lowly and at the low end and establish foundation for optimal health. So you can see there in the cycle that rather than a hierarchy or a pyramid and saying one is good and one is bad, I like to think of it as a cycle. You know, we try to establish those foundations: clean water, clean air, good food, supportive community, solid relationships. But again, understanding that we can't always alter our environment in certain ways. So trying to stimulate our self-healing mechanisms, addressing your physical alignment, providing natural symptom control. So we're really trained in botanical medicine, physical medicine, counseling, like I said, physiology, biochemistry, to really understand how the body works when it's its best function, and then to alter that in the lowest possible means at the beginning. And then also, sometimes we just have to jump right in with higher force intervention, surgeries, medications, pharmaceuticals, and we're trained on all of that as well. But again, we just don't stop at that treatment. We want to continue to dig and find root cause of disease, find root cause of ailments, so we can prevent them in the future. We can eliminate them for good without just suppressing those symptoms. So just a little bit about me. Again, I'm a part-time naturopathic medical doctor at Coeur d'Alene Healing Arts. I'm part-time. I'm just coming off maternity leave. I have a 5-month-old son at home, and in the midst of the pandemic, it just worked out better for me to part-time right now. So it's wonderful. I love it. I really truly believe that any path to wellness is the correct one. As long as we're staying safe, then I think we choose whatever path brings us to a better quality of life, and then we continue to investigate our wellness from there. So we use the tools we instinctively possess, combined with art and science of medicine. We truly can uncover a deeper root of disease and working on an individual basis to improve your state of health. So I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm a Euchre, for those of you who are familiar, born and raised on a sustainable homestead. A really deep respect and relationship with nature, and my personal passions for medicine is I do my research in resilience and the neuroimmunology of those who are able to cope and adapt well to obstacles in their life. Also, I want to just mention that I have been a caregiver for my dad, who also has a neurological condition, for about 20 years, and I devote a lot of my practice to the caretakers, the care providers, the care support people, because I do believe, and we can talk about that at the end, that it's a huge tenet of wellness and resilience in our patients. So that's also a huge part of my practice, and proudly served in OEF in 2010. So that is just a little bit about me. Pictured here is my 14-year-old therapy dog, Callie. Okay, so moving on. So we'll talk about integrative care in Parkinson's disease first. So a quick word about natural. My loyalty is not just to natural. It's what is going to help someone feel and function their best now and 15 years from now. My goal, again, is to use whatever works best with the fewest side effects to restore that body's natural ability to heal, and then dive into the root cause of what really is throwing that off kilter. I don't believe it has to be either or. I think it can be and. We can support and promote and enhance function naturally. But if you think about it, dopamine is a molecule that the body is deficient in, not unlike in type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, where insulin is deficient, and we replace that insulin. So dopamine is deficient in people with Parkinson's. We know that. Now the causes are up for debate. But again, if we can replace that and we can find that in a pharmacy, then I think that is the ideal situation. Now you can also get it from fava beans, mucuna, different things like that, but we really have formulated a wonderful medicine in the carbidopa-levodopa. So I don't see any reason to wait on starting that to modulate your symptoms. So I don't think that, again, we always have to have loyalty to natural. We just want to make sure that we're affecting people in a positive way with the few side effects. Again, just a note on integrative medicine being the future. I was home last summer in a small town of 2,000. My mom brings me the newspaper, which is literally 3 pages long, and says, look, isn't this something that you and Lori have been talking about for years, is that Parkinson's could begin in the gut? And I was so excited to see that this article made it to my small community in the paper, and that really people are starting to work together to understand the true cause of this disease, which has no known cause, idiopathic. And then not long after that, the Carrick Institute, a wonderful integrated neurological institute, also posted on social media an article about Parkinson's disease originating in the gut. So there's no question that the evolution in medicine is combining defense from conventional and the offense approach of chem care providers. So when 10 years ago we considered PD as a motor disease of substantia nigra, now we're talking about this as a systemic disease that starts in the gut almost 10 to 20 years prior to the first motor symptom. So the entire community is really taking this open-minded approach to figuring out what this disease is all about. So this is just another interesting tip or thought process on integrative care, that when I first saw Lori present this to me, my mind was just blown, and I knew how I wanted to practice and how I wanted to approach problems and disease in patients. So if you had somebody come to you with all these signs and symptoms, aggression, dermatitis, weakness, mental confusion, diarrhea, heart issues, think of how many different specialists that this particular patient would have to see to get the proper care for whatever is ailing them, all of these different symptoms. So if you've thought about it, you probably come up with at least this many, and maybe even more. I mean, this is 6 specialists, different appointments. And again, talking about the therapeutics, the medications that it would take, the exams, tests, imaging, everything that would be required for each of these diagnoses to come in, and then the treatment that would come on top of that, not to mention the side effects that is a result of each of these pharmaceuticals. And I want to take a step back here and say, with integrative medicine, with approaching these problems with such a broader scope, what we can really do is see that this person is suffering from a vitamin deficiency, niacin, just one vitamin. And I think when I first heard this, like I said, my mind was just blown, because we're in this um, system of algorithms, and you have this, you need to see this person and get this medication. And I just really truly believe that when we all step back and we all work as a team and we communicate, and patients have proper advocates, that we may see more and more that we can find a root cause of disease and treat it as such. So the next thing I just want to talk about a little bit is the lessons that we've learned in research so far. So the conventional paradigm of research, especially for Parkinson's disease, truly, I put inefficient, it's just not working. Right now, we don't have therapies for Parkinson's disease that are slowing the progression of disease. They're great at hiding the symptoms. They're great at masking the symptoms, suppressing the symptoms, improving quality of life. So again, I want to give that credit and acknowledge that there. But again, other than rasagiline, there's not many disease-modifying therapies yet. We've known about Parkinson's disease for 200 years. And again, other than exercise, nothing's really slowing the progression of the disease. And it keeps growing in its numbers yearly. This truly is the next pandemic of our world, as more and more people are becoming diagnosed and suffering with and from Parkinson's disease. So here's an interesting thought. If we could delay the onset of Parkinson's by 5 years, we could cut in half the number of people who have Parkinson's. So you're thinking about the millions of people afflicted now. If we could delay that onset, if we could prevent it by 5 years, we would actually cut in half the number of people who have it because of that disease progression. So again, it's a whole body disease. We're only looking at this downstream effect right now, these motor symptoms that come on at diagnosis, not what's happening 10 or 20 years prior. So it's truly like a tsunami is happening, and we're studying the trash that are brought to the coast, and we really need to be looking at the earthquake. So I think that's a really important lesson that we need to know. And again, we have a lack of a continuous outcome measure for slowing the PD progression rate. How will we know when we're actually doing what is working? So we'll get into that a little bit further. To bridge that gap, I want to talk a little bit about scurvy. And again, this is something that Lori taught me that it just really opened my eyes to the paradigm of research right now. And that is, scurvy was around for 200 years before we started treating it with Lyme's. And we treated it with Lyme's and it was effective. And then it was so many more years before we realized that it was the vitamin C in the Lyme's that was actually what people were deficient in scurvy. And so right now, what is happening is using integrative care, using nutrition and diet and exercise and lifestyle adaptations and supplementation of essential vitamins and minerals is truly working for people with Parkinson's. But the way that the research paradigm is set up right now is that we're unable to fund some of these research trials because they want us to know exactly what that molecule is in these interventions, what that vitamin C is that's causing the improvement. When truly, I don't know that anybody knows or will ever know, but using whole foods and integrative approaches to lifestyle and exercise isn't causing any harm. So this is where the paradigm is starting to shift, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. So again, right now, one of the measurable outcomes for Parkinson's is its UPDRS, lovingly named the chicken dance for people with Parkinson's. And this is, what they're using as outcome measures for severity of disease. And without belaboring the point, I just want to challenge everybody, whether you have Parkinson's or whether you don't, if you're a care partner, to actually take this test and take it in the morning and then taking it in the evening the next day, taking it on a weekend day, taking it on a stressful Monday, and seeing just how variable your scores come. So truly, it doesn't necessarily reflect the severity of PD. It reflects what you're going through in a minute-to-minute or day-by-day state of mind. So again, just not an effective outcome measure, yet this is what we're using currently to measure the severity of disease. So keeping in mind, only once 50% of your dopaminergic cells in the substantia nigra are gone, do you get the motor symptoms. This is usually 20 years into the diagnosis. So it's just not really up with the progression of the entire disease. We have a gap of about 20 years there that we need to close. So some questions to ask when we're thinking about shifting the research paradigm in the treatment paradigm is reversal possible? I truly believe that it is. I would like to think everyone out there with Parkinson's really believes that there's something out there to reverse their symptoms, and have met enough of you to know that you're trying. And then again, if it's possible, is it available? If we find that therapeutic, if we find that magic cure, and I have a magic wand, is it something that's available? Is it accessible? And then if it's both of those, it's possible and available, are people willing to do it? And you can go as extreme as, hey, are you willing to take 14 painful shots a day to reverse your symptoms? Or another question might be, are you willing to give up ice cream? And this is going to be on an individual basis, is what people's willpower or determination, perseverance, whatever you want to call it, is to reversing their symptoms. So this is a sketch that we love to demonstrate. This is basically this cardiologist explaining what a bypass surgery would be for this man with heart disease and all of the side effects of that, or giving the ultimatum of going on a vegan diet. And this gentleman says, vegan diet, that's pretty extreme. So as funny as it may be, it's also just highlighting the fact that every person needs to make those choices for themselves. So what I want to talk about now is this positive deviance model that Lori is currently using. And if you haven't been to propd.org, I highly suggest taking a look at it. Again, even if you're a person without Parkinson's, taking a look at it. I took this test when I was 8 months pregnant during PD summer school, and was way lower on the scale than many of my patients with Parkinson's. So it is interesting to do. But really what the positive deviance model does is it observes the communities and says there are certain individuals or groups whose uncommon behaviors and strategies will enable them to find better solutions to problems than their peers, while their access to the same resources and challenges are about the same. So we're using the diversity of the disease to our advantage, seeing how people progress differently, describing their variables associated with their best outcomes. So this started at Tufts, has a lot of applications across diseases, but it's never been applied to neurodegenerative diseases before. So there are some people with Parkinson's who have been diagnosed 16 years and they're still rock climbing and water skiing, feeling great. And then there are folks who are in wheelchairs a couple of years after diagnosis. And really, we just want to know what is different, who's doing what, and what is helping. So, and this is something that Lori has developed that already has brought so much clarity to what we are trying to achieve with Parkinson's. So currently there's over 2,000 people enrolled in this study. Again, I highly suggest looking into it if you are somebody with Parkinson's. So really it's asking, who are you, how are you, and what are you doing? Anybody can participate. It's internet-based. And really what we're seeing is that the slope is about 38 points per year on average. So what does that mean? After diagnosis, you're going to increase in 38 points per year, and your slope goes up. So that by the time you're at 10 to 15 years of your diagnosis, you're moving into a fair quality of life. So we want to see the different rate of progression, and you each get a dot, and you get to see where you are on this scale of progression. So again, we talked a little bit before, if we could delay that onset of diagnosis by about 5 years, we could cut in half the number of people that have Parkinson's. So again, we want to implement anything and everything that we can to make that early diagnosis. And what we're looking into now is dogs that can sniff PD, based on the woman in Scotland, who brought this to light, her ability to smell Parkinson's disease in her husband. And trying to, again, make that diagnosis early, understanding what is happening in the gut if it does originate there, and how can we find this earlier. So we want to, one, reduce the symptoms related to PD, and two, we want to improve that quality of life and reduce the need for dopaminergic medications. So again, what are these people doing? That's the big question. We want to know how you can stay in the green the longest. So redefining Parkinson's disease, this is going to be extremely important. I've talked about it multiple times. I'm sure you've heard it multiple times. And if you are somebody with Parkinson's, you know, yes, this is part of it. However, this definition is outdated. Really what we're seeing with our people with Parkinson's, they're reporting symptoms that are not always motor. There's not the tremor, it's fatigue, lack of sense of smell, memory impairment, maybe some sexual impairment, urinary dysfunction, anxiety, constipation, depression, withdrawn, apathy, quietness of voice. And then, of course, you have your motor symptoms in here as well. But again, I want to show that this is such a broader scope of what people with Parkinson's are suffering with. So lastly, but not leastly, this is really what the current research paradigm is focusing on. And this is what we're seeing our patients needing help with. So you may want to ask, Karin, why did you just spend almost half of your presentation talking about the current research paradigm and what needs to shift and all of these different aspects? And really what I want to say to that is the next topics that I'm going to cover, nutrition and diet with Parkinson's, it probably isn't going to be the first time you've heard it. It's not going to be these earth-shattering information. I hope you still listen because there's going to be some really interesting concepts in there. But it goes to show that these aren't just being thrown out as general guidelines. These aren't just health tips. These are actually being proven on that scale through ProPD. People who choose these different types of lifestyle behaviors are showing either slowing progression of their Parkinson's, cessation of the progression, and some even reversing the progression of their symptoms. So it's truly important to know how the current paradigm is set and what we're doing to shift that, to know that the next information that I'm going to give out really does bear so much weight and importance when you're looking at the treatment of this disease. So with that, let's move on. Let's talk about nutrition. So I want to redefine nutrition. Nutrition doesn't just mean diet. It's not something you just put in your mouth so you don't feel full. This is anything necessary to survival in our environment. Don't think about it as protein, carbs, and fats. There's so many sources of nutrition: vitamins, minerals, gravity, nature, community, love, and relationships, maybe a dog. So it's just this broad spectrum of that which nourishes us. So food is an excellent source of nutrition. It's just not the only one. So talking about gravity for a moment, it is such a source of nutrition. It's so necessary. We've evolved to need it for life, because now we know when we send astronauts up to space, they develop osteoporosis because of the lack of gravity. And then when they come home, it is reversed. So another disease that's thought of as not really being reversible is in the correct conditions for these individuals. So the first one I just want to chat about is sunlight. Sunlight is how the body produces vitamin D. Low vitamin D levels in Parkinson's are associated with so many consequences: muscle weakness, which can lead to frequent falls, greater risk of depression, constipation, elevated hsCRP, which is an inflammatory marker, and a risk of dementia. We hold a scale about 60 to 80 is what we would like people with Parkinson's to shoot for. I run labs on just about every single one of my patients who isn't on a supplement, even if they are, to see what their range is and make sure that we're ensuring they are within this target range. Is so necessary. And I really put sunlight in there. I didn't put supplementation vitamin D because there is no supplement that can out vitamin D the sun. The sun is truly how our body will make and produce this hormone that is so necessary. And this just goes to show that when there is a vitamin D insufficiency, how that impairs homeostasis, or the natural balance of things in our bodies, and affects so many of the underlying mechanisms of neurological disorders. Some other non-dietary nutrients that we talk about and don't really get into the science about, but again, there's research out there that supports these, especially in people with Parkinson's, is, oxygen, such a necessary part of our fundamental basis of life. But the effective and efficient use of oxygen is really what we're talking about here. Making sure we're doing breath work, deep breathing, making sure we're getting that oxygen to all of the spaces in our body, to all of our muscles and fibers and organs. is so, so necessary. So finding a practice where you can do that, whether it's through yoga or Tai Chi, maybe it's again just sitting and doing breath work, but maximizing the efficacy of oxygen. The next one is going to be, I'll just call this expression, vibration, art, music, singing, drumming, music, chanting. Again, so many people with Parkinson's will describe the disease as doing this to them. Their voice gets softer, it gets slower, their body movements get slower, and they get smaller. So we really want to open this up. We want to utilize everything in this open way. And again, I just encourage you to go Google and look at some of the research papers out there for expressive behaviors and the improvement in people with Parkinson's, everything from rhythm, motor skills, postural stability, and gait improvement, and voice control. So this is really incredible. This is a drum circle that we held at PD Summer School this past fall. It started as a simple drum circle, it turned into a dance party, and then just such an amazing community building event. It was just wonderful to be a part of. So just live in action, how we see our counterparts, people with Parkinson's, moving so freely and enthusiastically. So another nutrient that I'm specifically passionate about is this concept that came out of Japan called Shinrin-yoku, which translates into forest bathing. And really this sounds so hippy-dippy, but it's just take a walk outside, get out in the sunlight. Again, we talked about the benefits of sunlight, but also in nature, in green, in the rain, in the snow. Look at the leaves, smell the trees. There are studies, of course, 60 participants, 30 of them go for a walk in the city, and 30 of them go for a walk in a bamboo forest. And the things that they saw when they came back, lower cortisol levels. Cortisol is our stress hormone, improved mood, reduced anxiety. These are things that it matters. It really does matter. And a story I want to share is that Parkinson's Disease Summer School this past fall, we had this beautiful campus out in Kenmore, Washington, and a gentleman and his wife went out to go do some forest bathing after they learned about this and took a long walk. And this man had suffered from a lack of smell for years, as so many of you probably have. And I just happened to be standing right at the main entrance of campus when they got back, and they're just beaming, just glowing. And I was like, how was your walk? Did you have a good time? And his wife, he was just, he couldn't even speak, almost in tears. And his wife was just glowing. And she said, oh my gosh, he smelled the forest. And I don't know necessarily whether he hasn't been able to smell or if he hasn't taken the time to concentrate on what he could smell. But the experience of getting out there and taking time and being intentional truly moved this man to tears, to be able to really relate back to that sense of smell and experience the forest again in a way that he didn't think was possible. So again, some more conditionally essential nutrients that I want to talk about. Glutathione. Reduced glutathione is a primary antioxidant of the central nervous system. And what that means is that it takes free radicals and it squelches them so they can't affect our healthy cells. So free radicals are just like this picture, little gremlins that go out and they really affect our healthy cells. And these antioxidants go out and they donate their electron and it squelches it. It keeps it from being so destructive. And what we're seeing is that there's a 40% deficiency of glutathione in the brain in early Parkinson's disease. So this is the first, thing that we'll probably look at and supplement with, so we can make sure that there's no further damage happening. And now we're really talking about prevention. The next one is lithium. It's not just for mood disorders. The BDNF gene provides instructions for making a protein found in the brain. Called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this protein promotes the survival of nerve cells by playing a role in growth and maturation. Lithium induces this. It enhances autophagy, which is the detoxification of cells, neurogenesis. And again, we're finding even in a deficient region, which is our wet, cold, rainy areas, where most people are deficient in lithium, people with Parkinson's are 80% more likely to have low lithium than non-people with Parkinson's. So this is a test that's easily done through a hair sample and is done frequently with my patients. And again, when supplementing with just a low bit of lithium, we can see a mood stability here and a decrease in dystonia. CoQ10, another, sorry, worker in our body, another metabolite there that goes in and promotes mitochondrial function, an antioxidant. It's an antioxidant. Sorry about that. People with Parkinson's are more likely, again, to be deficient in CoQ10, about 30%. And again, we see the symptoms of deficiency being things that we see people with Parkinson's suffer from: muscle weakness, neurodegeneration, impaired cognition. We see a reduction in UPDRS by over 10 points and a reduced plasma F2 isoprostanes, which is a measure of oxidative stress when supplementing with CoQ10. So again, those mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cells, and we're supplementing them to be able to function as such. Vitamin C, so many functions, doesn't even fit on the page, but really the important thing there is it actually helps the efficacy of the carbidopa-levodopa. So when taken in conjunction with a buffered vitamin C, we see the efficacy go up, therefore the dosage can go down, and it can extend the use of that dopaminergic medication. The other thing that it really helps with is constipation, a common complaint of people with Parkinson's. So another essential nutrient. Sleep, can't talk enough about sleep. Hopefully you check out this video right here, Dr. Jason Valerio, Sleep and Parkinson's. It's phenomenal. It needs an entire different webinar dedicated just to that. But sleep is really where we produce that melatonin. And believe it or not, so much more melatonin produced in the gut. And that melatonin is a precursor to glutathione, which we've already talked about as being so essential. So again, so many sleep symptoms in Parkinson's disease. We want to make sure that we're managing this circadian rhythm, the sleep cycle, our melatonin production. Again, it's an antioxidant. We produce 400-fold increase more in our gut than we do in our brain in that pineal gland. So again, when we talk about gut dysmotility and dysfunction and dysbiosis, this affects directly our brain antioxidant amount. So making that connection is just so important. So again, talking with your doctor about your melatonin supplementation if you're not already on one, or if you think you may need one. So diet in Parkinson's disease, I'd love for you to pause this show right now and screenshot or save or whatever you need to do with this chart. This is really just a breakdown of the most common factors for increased progression of Parkinson's disease and the most common factors for a slowing in the progression of Parkinson's disease. I think it's really important to note here before we talk about food, this "I'm lonely" sentiment, especially in this time of social isolation and social distancing with the COVID pandemic, is just as being one of the top contributors to progression of disease. And I know there's more and more research right now being produced on this concept of social isolation being such a, it's affecting all diseases, but so much in Parkinson's because there is this natural withdrawal in the disease, like I talked about, that is so important. So we'll talk more about community a little bit later, but I just want to touch on it really quickly now and say it is just so imperative. It's right there at the top. When you're talking about foods, we're going to talk a little bit more about these. Again, screenshot this, throw it on your fridge, put it somewhere where you make your grocery list, and try to focus on what we should be focusing on to slow that progression. So overall, general guidelines is Mediterranean style diet. If it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. High intake of fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and fish. Low intake of saturated fat, moderate alcohol. Like I said before, this isn't going to be the first time you've heard this information, but I wanted to link it to the importance in that we're seeing the changes in the people who are choosing this in that ProPD, in that CamCare study. Coffee. What we learned about coffee is that people who drink below 3 cups or less of coffee a day had a 28% reduction of developing Parkinson's. Now, this is a preventive measure. This may be something that the children of people with Parkinson's want to consider, this and green and black tea, because we see that tea, 3 cups a day, delayed motor symptom onset by 7.5 years. So again, if you're a new diagnosis, maybe you want to take up tea. If you're the child of a person with Parkinson's, maybe you want to drink a cup of coffee a day to maybe produce or to prevent like again, none of these are just exact preventives, but these are correlative things that have been found through the research that are just so important to acknowledge. So dairy, we have over 5 large-scale studies showing dairy consumption is positively correlated with the development of Parkinson's disease and the progression of symptoms. So while initially thought it was just preventive for the development of the disease, now we are seeing that people with Parkinson's who consume dairy are progressing faster than those with Parkinson's who do not consume dairy. Dairy is high in arachidonic acid, which is inflammatory. And it also reduces uric acid. And a certain level of uric acid has actually shown to be protective against the progression of Parkinson's. So we just want to eliminate dairy. A lot of people will ask me about the dairy loophole. Can I do sheep or soft cheese? Organic milk, does that matter? Just a little bit of cream in my coffee. The fact of the matter is we're never going to have enough studies out there that take each one of these types of dairies and studies it against the other type in the progression of Parkinson's. So the best advice we can give is try to avoid it altogether. Plant-based milk right now looks like it's okay. It's still fortified with calcium, it's processed, it's refined, but if that's just something that you need, then that would probably be the way to go. And I do believe right now they're saying to focus on oat milk because we're trying to save the bees with the almonds. But something, again, to consider when you're looking into slowing that progression of disease. Dairy is such a large contributing factor. Our fatty acids, our brain is made of fatty acids. They are neurotransmitters, they regulate genetics, they insulate and protect. So in order to supply those fatty acids, we need to intake our fatty acids, and there's good and bad. Again, there's those omega-3s, EPA and DHA, which are anti-inflammatory, they're antioxidant, and we want to make sure that we have a higher ratio of this to our omega-6s. And again, we can run a lab test and see what you're already at and work on improving that. What we're seeing with a high omega-3 intake is a 40 to 50% reduced rate of or risk of dementia and a reduction in dyskinesia with the supplementation of high quality fish oil. Dr. Sam Evans, another wonderful colleague of mine, really focusing on the gut in Parkinson's disease. She's phenomenal. I'm not even going to try to dive into all these different bugs or their names, but just acknowledge the fact that people with Parkinson's have a different microbiome than those who don't. We see a huge anti-inflammatory reduction in people with Parkinson's, so they are lacking good bugs. And then we're seeing an abundance in the Enterobacteriaceae family, which can correlate with postural instability and gait difficulty. So again, adherence to that Mediterranean diet can increase that Prevotella, which is anti-inflammatory. And then if you're having gut dysbiosis and constipation, making sure that you're adjusting that with your healthcare provider as well. Some other constituents in food that we just love, and hopefully I don't have to twist anybody's arm for this, is the polyphenol content. We find it in cloves, dried peppermint, star anise. Go ahead and get some of this tea and start that out in the morning. You get all those wonderful polyphenols. Cocoa powder and dark chocolate also contain quite a bit, so enjoy that little piece of dark chocolate as your dessert. And flaxseed, wonderful for constipation, provides your polyphenols. So these are different things to think about incorporating into your daily diet. This is a graphic I just love to show how important it is, the foods that we try to eat on a biochemical level. There's not a quiz on this later. You're not going to be asked to pronounce any of this, but this is just a small percentage of the molecular mechanisms involved in Parkinson's disease. And here we can see exactly how the constituents, polyphenols, flavonoids, genistein, curcumin, quercetin, so all these different ECGC or EGCG, sorry, that's found in tea, all these things are actually affecting those molecular mechanisms to either inhibit or enhance them in a way that can slow the progression of Parkinson's disease. So again, this might be a good thing to screenshot, throw in your fridge, your grocery list, eat this, not this. I want to acknowledge that diet is not just what we're eating, but also the how and the why. So mindfully eating, knowing the source and ingredients of your food, being able to pronounce it is a good start. Ask yourself why you're eating when you're eating. I actually just finished a week-long juice cleanse, the detox, and it was phenomenal, just because it really did bring to light for me why I chose to eat when I ate. There were so many times I walked by my pantry and went to reach in to grab a snack. And when I stopped back and really asked myself, because I wasn't supposed to be eating during this fast, why are you hungry? And I wasn't. So it's just really, truly interesting to start getting into that practice. Are you nourishing yourself, or are you bored? Are you anxious? I know during this pandemic and the social isolation and homebound, there is a lot of eating happening and snacking. So it's just getting into that habit of asking yourself, why? Eating with gratitude, again, right now, I think is a little easier for everybody because we are seeing this lack of food, this malnourishment that's happening, in our own backyards now. This isn't just happening in third world countries or impoverished areas, which is just extremely heartbreaking, but it's happening now in everybody's backyard. And people are undernourished. So eating with appreciation is so important. Just eating a little bit less, a reduction in calories in an animal study showed that it improved the lifespan. And trying to eat organic. I mean, people with Parkinson's surveyed who chose local organic food had a Pro-PD score about 98 points lower. And this is with all other things being equal to their counterparts. So again, when we're looking at the community to see what are you guys doing that's helping, this is something that's almost 100 points lower on that scale, on that card. So it's really something we want to stress here. I want to acknowledge some of the challenges of a whole foods diet with Parkinson's. There is a short-term cost incurred here. It is a little more expensive to buy organic produce, and sometimes it can go bad quickly. And there's more trips to the grocery store because of this. Food prep, chopping and slicing is required. It can taste bland at first. If you're used to eating sugar with every meal, those blueberries might not taste sweet. I would encourage you to give it a chance. Lack of family support. If other people in your core family aren't choosing to eat in these same practices, it can be very difficult to make these changes. Unsure of what or how to prepare the food can also be a concern. So there are definitely challenges and obstacles, and I want to acknowledge that for you. And I think it's taking one step at a time and making one small change and working on that together with your healthcare provider and with your community. And then, of course, there's weight loss concerns in people with Parkinson's, especially in advanced stages of disease, that we want to avoid. Unhealthy weight loss concerns. But then again, weight loss excess weight, being overweight, can be a predictor of more severe progression of Parkinson's. So it could be a benefit as well. So it just, again, it's such an individual basis. How to prescribe food is so difficult. A lot of conventional docs just aren't trained that much in nutrition. And our registered dietitians aren't trained in neurology, but it's a work in progress. And again, I think if we all step back and work together, we can really make this happen as effective as we need it to be. So real quick word on resilience, again, just because this is something that I'm passionate about. And again, I devote so much of my practice to caring for the caregivers, the people with Parkinson's, the community there. And I do believe, with my whole heart, is that if I could meet Viktor Frankl, we would be best friends. So 5 tenets of resilience that I've learned about in my research are stress and coping, goals, purpose planning, optimism, gratitude and meaning making, and connection and belonging. These are the tenets to what makes somebody be able to cope and adapt to obstacles in their life. So many determinants are incorporated here, and these can fluctuate and do fluctuate throughout our life. There may be times in our life when we were so resilient, able to cope and adapt, and then times when we were vulnerable and fragile and unable to. And I think when we reflect back on those times and maybe we were able to, we can see what was happening in our environment and how many of those tenets were present. Again, wants that to be kind of an intangible and inherited trait, this grit. Research is growing in the field of quantitative and qualitative measures of resilience. So we're enhancing these coping mechanisms when preparing for or faced with a traumatic event. And I think the more that we can understand about this trait, the more that we can try to instill this in our patients. And it's something that I bring up with each and every person that I work with. When I speak about caregiver health and patient resilience, it's sometimes difficult because so many caregivers devote so much time and effort to caring. And it's such a two-way street. And I want to highlight this quickly for you. Is just showing over 40% of caregivers indicated their health had suffered as a result. Almost half had increased depression scores, and 2/3 report that their social life has suffered. And I'm sure even more now, again, with this pandemic that we're all experiencing. This seems common sense, but it's so important to acknowledge that, of course, the caregiver burden is increased with the increasing disability and symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So this is where we see that interconnectedness between the patient health and the caregiver health, patient resilience and the caregiver resilience, is that as the patient or person with Parkinson's may progress into their disease, so does this health of the caregiver. And how does this then in turn respond? Well, if the caregiver's health suffers, then the patient's resilience and health will also. So the amount of the determinant of resilience is the amount of social support available and utilized. We also have studies out there showing that caregivers also need support and care, which we know, again, we have studies on these things. But again, what we're seeing is that level of burden is eminent in building family resilience, which promotes the patient's individual resilience and then eases the caregiver burden. So it's just to say, again, that the better we're taking care of the entire support system for everybody, the more resilient and well our patients can be and our people with Parkinson's. Again, this is just the cycle to show that when you break this at any point in time, it all kind of can fall apart. So caring for those caregivers is just such a crucial tenet of making sure that that patient, that person with Parkinson's, is getting the best possible care so they can build their resilience and in turn ease that caregiver burden. So again, I appreciate your time. I just want to thank the Northwest Parkinson's Foundation again for having me. I so wish we could have done this live. I know so many of our events have been canceled lately. I look forward to seeing you all again. I think the last time I saw most of you was in Bellingham and I was 8 months pregnant. Or at Parkinson's Disease Summer School. If this is the first time you've seen my face, I'm so happy to virtually meet you, and I'm available for questions, and you can email me anytime, info@cdahealingarts.com, or call our clinic here at 208-664-1644. I am doing telemedicine at this time, so I'm happy to see anybody in any location. And again, just want to thank you for your time and wish you all a healthy journey forward through this chaotic time in our life. Cheers.